Hey, we're rolling.
All right, folks, today I'm out here, I'm actually idling around. It's late summer, kind of going into fall. I'm out here idling around looking for brush piles, looking for timber lines, just looking for somewhere to fish when the lake starts turning over and fish start to bite really good offshore. And I'm going to kind of do it the way that I used to do it when I didn't really have electronics. The funny thing is about electronics, I'm doing an electronics video. And to be completely honest with you, I'm probably not that tech savvy of a guy. I'm not really an electronics guru, but I wanted to do a video on electronics, not being a tech savvy kind of guru, because I think when you're not really that tech savvy, you talk in a language that people that aren't tech savvy understand. Because when people start using really big language and start moving really fast and start explaining things that are really difficult, it can be a little bit intimidating, overwhelming. I don't really know that much about it. I just know how to use it to get what I need to get to catch a bass sometimes. So a lot of the technical stuff is I don't dive into it super deep, especially for you guys that are starting off with electronics. But I'm going to show you how to do it just with 2D sonar and mapping. I think that's really important because chances are if you're just starting out with electronics, fishing electronics, that's probably all you got and all that you're invested in. Now, the units that I have on my boat, I have the capability to use them as I can do just about anything. I think I can go find I can find whatever I want to. I can find a bass in Australia, probably here in South Carolina with these units. But they also have the most simplistic capabilities, 2D sonar and mapping, which I think is by far the two most important things on fishing electronics is your mapping, because that tells you where all the contours are on a lake, where your depth changes are, which is the most important in finding fish deep, is those two elements, as well as 2D sonar. You know, forward facing is really popular right now. We have live scope on the Garmin units, all the 3D, the side imaging. We can look all 360 degrees around our boat right now. But there's only two elements that I can use while I'm on plane and while I'm fishing: mapping and sonar. So I think it's super important for you to learn those two elements first. Get really good at learning how to use your mapping and how to use your 2D sonar first. And then after you master finding fish, catching fish that you found using your 2D sonar and your mapping, then you can start to explore into the world of 3D sonar, which is the down view, the side view, looking out beside my boat as I'm idling and looking under my boat at the same time while I'm reading my mapping. If you try to jump into all of that, just starting out into electronics, it's going to be super overwhelming. You're not, it's going to be too much for you to absorb. So we're going to break it down super simple. Mapping, 2D sonar, all right? Now, whether or not we're gonna catch a fish today, disclaimer: that ain't the video. We'll have to make it like a 3-part series. All right. So let's call it that 3-part series today. Today, I'm going to show you how to use the mapping 2D. Then we're going to look at forward-facing and side imaging, and then on part 3, we'll go into we found the structure. We know where the fish are. We've located the structure, located the bass, we've located the food. What baits do we use? What does it look like when we're trying to catch them? All right, that sound like a deal? 3-part series on this deal? Let's start with it right now. Just looking for what we're actually going to fish. All right, so you can see I've got presets on my graphs here. These numbers right here on the side of the Garmin's. You can set screen presets. So basically, when I go into my home screens, I can set up whatever I want. You know, if I want side imaging, if I want mapping on one screen. You notice I only have one graph at the console. A lot of people say, well, I need 3 graphs at the console. Well, yeah, that's kind of cool, and yes, it does help, but for me personally, I can process what's going on better on one graph. Having 2 is great in some situations, but for me personally, doesn't mean this is the way you need to do it. I like one graph. All right, so I've got several different presets here. Side imaging and down imaging. I've got just straight up mapping for sometimes where I really just want to look at a map. For today, we're just going to focus on mapping, which is what you see on this left side of the screen. and 2D sonar. All right. And what I'm idling, I may bounce back and forth between the two, 3D and 2D, just to kind of give you some comparison. But what I want to focus on today is finding fish, what you need to look for with mapping in 2D. So first of all, you're always going to look at high percentage areas. A lot of times when you think about fishing deep structure, people think, well, I'll just get out in the middle of the lake and just start idling around. Well, no, you won't. Don't do that. The thing you're going to try to do is find structure, fish, food, i.e. bait, etc., high percentage places, and your graph is actually going to let you do that faster. You can, if you look around me, there's points everywhere. There's a point right there, a point right there, a point right there. We're on the point of an island right here. There's an island over there. All these points all around me. Let's say that I want to fish points today. Well, of course there's not going to be a fish on every one of these points. The whole objective of my electronics is I can sit here at the console, right? And I can start to idle around each one of these points, find brush on specific points, find bait fish on specific points, and or fish. A lot of times people dumb down electronics to only finding fish. Be completely honest, there's very few times where I actually see the fish on my electronics as I'm idling. There's times, now don't get me wrong, most of the time for me where I live, it's gonna be in the winter time. But I would say 70% of the time, I'm not even worried about locating fish. I've determined that fish are in 15 foot of water, on brush, on rocks, on boulders. I sit at the console, I start idling, looking for those pieces of structure. That's why you're using electronics. A lot of times people, you hear them say, well, electronics are cheating. They just show you where all the fish are. Well, okay, let me see you come out here and try that way. That's not how it works. It helps you be more efficient on the water. Now I can find stuff more efficiently. I don't have to waste my time all day. It would take me all day to cover just every last one of these points that you can see just here inside of me, not in this whole creek, just here inside of me. But with my electronics, I can just start idling around. So we're going to do that right now. There's a point right here, and I'm going to idle down each side of it. What I'm going to do is, since we have 2D sonar, I'm only looking under my boat right now. My transducer is back there at the motor. I'm only looking at my boat. I'm going to come up over here on my mapping, right? Can you see this point that we make right here? Let's see. There's an island right here. And you see this island makes a point. These contour lines right there, that shows you where the high spots are, okay? So here's my island. You see right here, it makes a long point that reaches way out here in the middle of this creek. I'm zooming out. This is the middle of the creek. I'll zoom way out so you can see where I'm at. I'm in the dead center of the creek right there. The boat, there's the boat, that's us. There's your creek, there's your island. Now here on the tip, a very long point. This is a high percentage area. Same thing I would be fishing shallow, but instead of looking up in 2 or 3, 4 foot, we're gonna be looking in 12 foot to 30 foot, okay? So what I'm gonna do, put the boat in gear, and I'm just gonna idle down one side of this point, see if I see any structure, as in brush. This is timber that you're seeing right here on my 2D sonar right now. Not gonna worry about 50 foot. Fish ain't gonna be in 50 foot. If they are in 50 foot, we ain't catching them today. All right. As soon as my boat gets in about 38-ish, 35, I'll start paying attention to what I see. All right. So 33 foot. Now we're in the hot zone. You see, if you look over here on the 2D sonar, I'm starting to ease up on the point. That point right in front of us, it's just coming way out here in the middle of the cut. Now I want to start to look. I'm going to start paying attention to any kind of reading that I'm seeing on my graph. Not really sure what that is. Not seeing anything just yet. I'm in 19 foot. All right, now you see I got a little disturbance right here on the bottom. We'll go to 2D sonar. See that little bit right there? That's probably just a little bit of brush right there on the bottom. Okay, I'm just going to zoom back out to normal. I don't really see much on this point. I don't see any food, just a little bit of brush, not a lot. And that's not necessarily bad. That just means, now that's some fish right there for sure. See those arches right there? 100%, that's just fish. Now let's take a good look at it. That's fish right there. Right there, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's probably a little brush right down here on the bottom. I can confirm it. On these graphs, I have the ability to cross-reference because I have 3D sonar, which looks a lot more realistic. So if I go back on my 3D sonar, you can see what this actually is. Uh-oh, let me go. Then I'm gonna pause it. All right. There's a couple pieces of timber right there. See how much different it looks on the 3D? And there's my fish right there. Those 2 dots, that's actually fish. The 2 dots right there. Okay? And there goes a few more fish right here. These little dots, that's on 3D. Now let's go back and look at it on our 2D screen. Oh yeah, that was a big group. Let's go back. See? Now see something as significant as that, I'm gonna put a waypoint on that, mark it, and come back and fish it. What I like to do, my program is get your idling in, idle for 3-4 hours as long as you can take it, and then come back and fish the areas that you found. It's almost like painting. You cut in around the edges and then you come back and fill in everything. That's kind of my program. So that's what I like to do. Now let's just pretend maybe you don't have, when I started out electronics, I didn't have a graph on the console at all. 0. Only had a graph on the bow. And you can do that. I did the same thing. Let me tell you what I did. I used to throw the trolling motor overboard, set back on the big motor, tilt my screen up, and look for fish. Do the same thing I'm doing. I would be looking for my graph back here, looking at it up front. That's why I always suggest that, guys, if you don't have enough money to get graphs at both ends, I particularly think it's more important to have a graph at the bow. This is where you spend most of your time fishing. And if you're new to fishing, I think you'll learn more by seeing what's under you on the trolling motor than you will idling. It takes a different skill set to understand what you're looking at the console than it does at the bow. And when you're fishing, stuff makes a lot more sense because you're moving slower, you're filling the bottom as you're fishing. Stuff makes a lot more sense. So I like to start at the bow if you only have money for one graph. That's what I did. I would put the trolling motor down, idle around, turn my graph up and look at it at the console. So that's what I would suggest if you only have one graph. Somebody's calling me right now about it. Actually, we're not going to answer that. Somebody from a comic. So that's what you guys can do if you don't have enough cash to get graphs at both sides. You still can do this. It takes a little bit of extra work. All right, you can see I idle over some fish again. This was in about 20 to 22 foot of water. Right there. See, I put the crosshairs on them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what they're going to look like. So on 2D sonar, anytime you see these little arches like that, those are going to be bass. I like the way that's set up. It lets me know they're bass. If they're kind of stacked on top of one another, like they would have been just boop, 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 boop. That could have been white bass or something else. But the way they're stacked up like that is most likely spotted bass, where I'm at today. And I'm going to show you where I'm idling, which is the most important part. You know, I can show you fish all day, but the most important part is understanding where to look. So you can see I have another long point here. You see this point runs way, 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 way out here in the middle of the lake. And see that there's us, the boat right here. You can see when I got on the tip of this little knob right here, this is where we marked our fish. Okay. I'm gonna confirm it with my 3D. You can see those bop, 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 bop. I just backed up and you can see there's some fish there, right there. I got a little group now. There's a little bit of brush right there on the bottom. A little fuzzy spot, and then I got a few fish around that. 1, 2 fish around that little piece of brush there. So I'll throw a dot on that spot. All I got to do is this on a garment is just mash mark. I can go in here and change my waypoints, change the symbols if I want to. You know, a lot of times I'll put a stop sign or, you know, whatever. That's all this is idling around deeper on the places that you would normally fish shallow. That's all you have to do with this. So you can do this at the console, If you only have one graph, throw your trolling motor overboard, idle around, make sure there's no stumps wherever you're at. All right, you probably wouldn't want to do this if you live at Lake Fork. Here where I'm at, there's no structure pretty much that I got to worry about, so you can throw your trolling motor overboard and look at your graph up front. So that's what it looks like using 2D sonar and mapping. That's what it's going to look like. I just wanted to show you exactly how to use the two pieces of equipment, what the fish look like, what structure looks like. And then, like I said, we're going to do a 3-part series. We'll come back and I'll show you exactly how to fish it as well. It's going to be, a lot of that's going to be dependent on what type of fish you're fishing for, what lake you're on, how deep they are, what time of year it is, but try to give you a general idea of what that looks like as well.